Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and listening. I am your host, Neil Horowitz, here back for a great 2024. It's the first episode of 2024, and it is a stellar one. As always, you can find the podcast on dsmsports.net, where I post more content. You can find me, your host, at NJH287 on Twitter, as well as on LinkedIn, and hope to bring the podcast to you on every podcast platform, including YouTube, starting soon. So watch out for that. My guest on the podcast today is incredible. This is a great interview ahead. My guest is Jason Lavine. He is the Vice President of Content and Production for the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers just do a tremendous job in the social and content space, have a well-earned, well-deserved reputation as being among the best out there. We're going to talk about that. We talk about identifying and cultivating talent. You'll hear Jason talk a lot about his team and how creative and talented they are and how it's a big part of it. That is the part of it. We also talk about how they embrace their reputation of being good at social and how it helps them and how it kind of is a positive feedback loop. We just cover so many things. You're going to want. I listened to this multiple times. I took notes while I was editing the transcript. Just tremendous stuff from Jason. So listen up. Here is Jason Lavine, VP of Content Production for the LA Chargers. Right back with today's guest, and I'm so excited to be able to talk to him. My guest on the podcast today is Jason Lavine. He is Vice President of Content and Production for the Los Angeles Chargers. Jason, thanks so much for coming on today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Really excited to pick your brain. The Chargers obviously have an incredibly well-earned reputation as being one of the best when it comes to social content, digital, all those things, and all of that is under your umbrella of what you oversee with the Chargers. But before we get into the meat of our discussion today, Jason, tell us about you. Tell us about your career path, how you got started, your stops along the way, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Let me think. Well, I went to school at Northeastern University for sports broadcasting. I wanted to be in play-by-play. That was like my dream. Called play-by-play in college basketball for the Northeastern basketball team. Enjoyed it. But when I was in 2009, like between my junior and senior year, I was fortunate enough to get an intern, like a summer internship with the just started media team at the New York Jets. And I just like logged tapes all summer. They were building a historical library. So I sat in like this caged area. That sounds bad, but it's really not. Like this caged area with like historical tapes, and just went through every single tape they had and started to digitize and organize it for them so they could digitize and bring it into their system. You know, this is back in 2009. So watching tapes, logging tapes by hand, that type of thing. So I did that. I was nice enough to be invited back. They were nice enough to invite me back after I graduated college as a part-time intern. So I was part-time intern doing some other stuff too. And then I was part-time, and then I was a full-time intern for 2 years. And then they hired me 3 years later, I think in like 2013. I was an intern for, I think, 3 years.
Wow.
And then was a coordinator digital video, manager digital video, you know, doing your normal website video content at that time, which was primarily football focused, and working with that team that was building. You know, this was 2012, 2013, 2014. So a lot different of a time. Then I was fortunate enough to get hired out here at the time. Well, it was the Los Angeles Chargers, but I went to San Diego for a couple months starting it was like March of 2016 or 17, I think, 2017. And then we moved up here to LA, and I was hired as the managing producer. And I was the only video person at the time. We had a very small group. You know, Joel Price was here. I'm sure everyone knows Joel, the great Joel Price. And we hired a social person for the first time, which was cool. And then we had that. And then we had Ricky Henney on digital. And that was really it. That was our team. And, you know, now I'm, as you said, VP content and production. That's kind of the story.
So at what point did you kind of say, like, okay, the broadcasting thing, maybe not my dream anymore, and I'm gonna lean into this growing digital and social space?
I think I realized it 2 years after college. Probably it was more of realizing I don't think I was good at it, but I realized how tough it would be to be successful in it and get to where I wanted to be with a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just I liked working for the Jets. That are my favorite team growing up. And I was super interested in what they were doing. I just liked the idea of like being around players and creating content. I thought it was cool. I didn't know anything about it, but it was cool. And that's kind of when the shift happened, 2012.
Yeah. And what kind of content were you creating back then? And was it just sort of like your higher ups were saying this is the kind of content we need for the website? Go shoot it, go do it. Was there
Yeah.
any? How did the creative agency start to enter your role as well?
I mean, that takes a while. I mean, that's for anyone. I mean, I'm just doing what they're telling me to do. Log, shoot, learn. I was logging a lot, shooting a lot, producing, writing scripts, working on TV shows, delivering tapes to getting coffee, whatever people needed.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it worked. Dry cleaning, whatever someone needed, I did. I didn't care. Whatever kept me in the building. And then, I think in like 2013, 2014, when I started working with the senior writer there, and we started to build out like website content, website video content, like live shows, those types of things is kind of like when I started to primarily work on that stuff and start to figure out like what a content calendar was. And I started posting content and just taking it day by day, like, okay, now I'm posting, what's next? And then started to come up with ideas, go to the combine, those types of things, just learning from watching others, right? Watching other teams' websites at the time video wasn't primarily on social at the time. So it's
Right.
very different. So, going to teams' websites, seeing what really liked what the Rams were doing back then. So I saw a lot of what they were doing. I was like, oh, that's cool. We should try that. Niners were a team I looked at a lot. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And then then we started bringing some talented people and like working with others and starting to expand it. Start to develop your own ideas as you go, but you're really taking the lead of your bosses.
And how did you guys kind of know, like, when you did take chances, or even when you didn't, like, what was working, what wasn't working? And also, like, was there a point when you kind of took some chances of like this might not be traditional NFL content? Maybe we don't just do here's a couple of interviews about the game ahead and talking X and O's. That paradigm lasted a long time, and in some ways still does today for
Yeah.
reason. But how did that kind of evolve in your time?
I mean, at the Jets, like my role was primarily focused on football content at that time, but we did a lot of lifestyle stuff. Like we had a show called Jet Life and that ran on CBS, and I would help, create features for that. That's like a player going to I don't know, go-karting or whatever, right? So it was existing, but it was like the beginning stages of the evolution of where we are now, which is obviously very different. I I in terms of like understanding what was performing, what wasn't, we weren't really like, it was still very new for everyone. I don't think anyone at that time really knew what was working and what wasn't. I think everyone was just kind of doing stuff. And then I think now, obviously, it's very different, very data driven, and you know what's good and what isn't. But at that time, the audience was still adapting and learning, and so were we.
Yeah, I mean, I can even think back on my own time of sitting with the video producers and like looking at website plays and starts and time spent, and then eventually the social media metrics came
Yeah.
into play. So especially for you, whether it's with the Chargers now or throughout your career with the Jets as well, what was that like balance like? And it's hard to put this in clear way, but the balance between this stuff the video producers are going to produce versus this stuff the social media producers can take care of, especially as we had like all these growths of platforms and Snapchat and Instagram stories, and there's stuff that, yes, the quick hits that someone like me when I was a social media manager could go and take care of, and it wouldn't matter much in terms of the overall like broadcast level quality or something like go on a video board or stuff that is more in the video producers, the video production team's realm. Like, how did that balance start to play out through your time and even today?
Well, before you're in charge, your balance plays out based upon how your bosses tell you it plays out. So, I just did what I was told to do. Like I can't make that more clear. I had no creative. I mean, you start to gain more of a role, and like your voice means more as you start to as you start to develop your career. But
Mhm.
I'm following what my bosses want me to do. I had ultimate respect for them. I'm deferential to leadership of always. So they're in charge. I do what they tell me to do, and how they decide to split up their resources is their choice. You tell me where to go, I do it. Now, very different. I mean, obviously, I'm deciding it. So,
Right.
I mean, it's a group decision, of course. But yeah, of course, like now, everything, your resources, how you structure your department, everything is there's a lot of factors that go into that in any department. Our decisions here are vastly different than the decisions made by the Green Bay Packers or the Houston Texans. Those decisions are based upon resources, what you're good at, what you want to be, what you're aspiring to be, what you believe in as a group. And all those things help determine where you go. A strategy, I mean, you can't just have a strategy and be like, we're going to do this. If you don't have the people to do it and you don't have the organization to do it, then it doesn't mean anything. So, you know, how social, like in terms of like a social team, yeah, like so you hire social people to create social community managers, having elite copy, creating social first content that can be anywhere, a mix of something that is a video to something that isn't, right? Um, and then you're going to have your video team who's going to be producing more of the fairly produced stuff, right? That someone went to college for and learns and knows. And then you have a graphics team that's focused, so it's that type of thing. I hope that answers your question.
So when you're constructing a team, especially when you have the opportunity to do so and still do today with the Chargers, like, is it not necessarily a prerequisite, but is it helpful if a social media person, like, do you want to know they have some video skills? Do you want to know they can at least handle themselves in, a cap cut or whatever it might be, or like what kind of skills to come into play? And are you looking for people that, well, we need at least someone that can do videos so they can take care of stories and Snapchat or whatever it might be, or TikToks, or is it more like you're looking for a different set of skills, just they have an intuition for social and will help them out where they need to, or help skill up as needed as well?
Yeah, it depends. It's a good question. I mean, depends. How we hired 5 years ago is very different than how we hire now. How we hired 5 years ago was you had to be able to do everything because we didn't have enough people. My focus at that time was video. Now, we have an entire social team, a rather large one, but we didn't before. But when you're hiring social people, we're hiring people who understand social first. We'll hire a video team to make video, and we need people on that video team who understand how to make what the social team needs to be successful, that are not running in silos. They run together. There's an incredible amount of overlap in having success. And yeah, like you want your person who is creating like your TikToks on your social team, which is, more your organic versus maybe a produced weird video that could also go on TikTok. You want that person to obviously be able to know how to edit in some capacity, because everyone on video on the social team in some ways has to, right? Because of how it is. But we don't expect them to sit down and cut a hype video, right? We'll have people who can do that. Your talents dictate where you go.
And how have you seen that? I guess affect your ability to construct a team, like when with all these platforms that have sprung up over the last few years, and just the seemingly unending thirst for content, and also some tools that have made it not easy but easier to create content. Like, do you think about, I want to have a team of generalists that just understand, like as you put it earlier, that understand social. And the word social is a very loaded term, of course. It can mean a lot of things. So, or do you want someone that really knows YouTube, that knows TikTok, that knows Twitter? I'm not going to call it X. Or do you would rather have just someone that has that intuition for, quote unquote fan engagement, for lack of a better term?
Well, answer that two ways. The first part is that's always going to depend on your team and who your skill sets are. When you have someone like Megan Julian as your head of social, you're covered because no one understands it better. She's the best in the world. So when you have Tyler Pino, who's the senior director of production, you're good. He understands video, and so from there, they know how to cultivate talent and know what they need. Now, when it comes to, and that's across the board, digital, it's all the same thing. You trust the people you hire to do their jobs and find the people they need to and cultivate the right talent. But when it comes to I don't believe in generalists overall. Like in our department, that wouldn't be helpful. You're good at a lot of things. You're probably good at nothing. Like at a young age, you can't be. It's impossible. I think when you're hired here, we've identified a specific skill set and trait in someone that we think can help us, that they possess that someone doesn't possess. That's what we're identifying in someone at this point when you have 37 people, or 30 people in content. So, and then it depends. Social, we certainly are looking for a specific type of brain. And then depending on what they're doing in video, depends on what we're looking for. If they're being hired for storytelling, then we're looking for a specific sentimental type of edit. We're looking for someone who has really good sound design qualities, can pace. Pacing is extremely important in storytelling. If you can't pace, you can't do the job. And that you can tell within 5 seconds of looking at someone's reel, in my opinion. Someone either knows how to pace or they don't. It's tough to learn. But if it's social video can match up a lot. If it's like hype videos match up well with stadium. So like typically those people edit the same stuff, in my opinion. And then YouTube, depends what you're making, because YouTube is essentially just another large video platform that takes basically anything over a certain amount of time for long form, and then under, a minute or a minute 30 for shorts. But that content could come from anywhere. So we're definitely not platform specific in any way. We typically look at it as create the best possible content, which we have a plan for, which we understand, and we'll figure out where it goes based upon where it needs to go, right? And it all adapts from there.
And so really, like when you're thinking about planning content, it's not so much we're producing content for TikTok or producing content for YouTube, or maybe it is at times. Like, is it really we are creating some foundational content? We have a content calendar. We have some stuff that might be a little more reactive. I want to get into that in the weeds in a moment. But when it comes to like serving different platforms, do you have an idea of where you want content to go? What platforms you want to prioritize? What platforms maybe we can cut something for this. Maybe it doesn't matter quite as much. Like, how do you think about those like foundational pieces that get sliced and diced for various platforms?
Yeah, that we understand, but we know where something's going to go when we make it. We've worked together a long time. So like, it depends what it is. If it's a hype video, it's going everywhere. If it's a customizable branded piece of content like Camping Out, where we build a set and we sell that set to Toyota, and we build this really cool set and we put players on it, we're doing interviews, we know that's for YouTube to start, but we know it's going to be cut up into smaller pieces, created in a social engaging way for Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And then we know that little parts of it, far smaller parts of something like a branded content that are just like really funny, unique parts of it, could go to TikTok. But TikTok is its own, typically UGC style. The best content on that platform is always going to be when the social team goes down to the locker room and asks the player a question, right? Like that's always going to be what drives that, or something from mic'd up, or something just unique and funny that you can't plan for, in some ways. So you kind of just like understand what works. But we also know, based upon what something is, if something's a good piece of content, it should go everywhere. But how it's distributed and what it looks like when it goes to those platforms is why we hire a social team and why they're so good at what they do, right? How you package something, I think, you can have a good idea, but a good idea doesn't mean anything if you don't know how you're going to package it, and you don't have the team members you have to package it properly. Copy. If you don't have good copy, you have nothing. Then it's not going to get engaged with.
So let's actually break that down into its atomic parts a little bit. Not to get too much in the weeds, but that's kind of the point of this podcast to some degree. Yeah. It's like, what is that process like from concept to execution? Like, I'm sure ideas can come from a lot of places. Sometimes from yourself, sometimes from people you work with. What happens? Is there a documented plan of here's how it's going to work, here's what budget we may need, here's what the final product's gonna sound like and look like how much of that is determined at the outset, and how much needs to be justified, and then how does it sort of change or evolve as it goes from concept to execution?
It changes based upon what it is and how important it is. You're creating for TikTok, you're trusting people who do that to just take chances and do stuff. Again, if you're creating a hype video for a playoff game, there's a considerable amount of thought that goes into that moment versus week 7. And who does it might change too. We certainly, if there's a bigger project, like we're anticipating Antonio Gates getting into the Hall of Fame. So we know next summer we have a rather large moment coming. And that has to be planned out 8 months, 10 months in advance from a budgeting standpoint to make sure that we have what we need and we know what we like to do. And then there's always going to be that stuff that you can't plan for that we'll just create, and we know we can create and hopefully monetize when the time comes. And that's how we look at everything. We build a frame of everything and typically throw that frame out pretty quickly, depending on what's working, what's not. We'll training camp, draft, whatever it is, you have to come in with a frame. Otherwise, people are not going to know what to do with their time. They're just going to be sitting there, right? So they got to know where they're going. So that. The rest of it, the reactionary content, the stuff that you can't plan for, that's what you're paying. That's like why you pay people well and try to cultivate the right place, because it's the instinctual content, the instincts in human beings to create a certain type of product, knowing in the moment what to create, that we try to teach and adapt and learn so we can make the stuff that's going to go viral. Now, if it's a meme post game, we plan all those scenarios out, obviously, in advance, but you never know what's going to come up that you're going to try to create in the moment based upon what happened. And so you try to have enough people to, you got to have the right people and the right mindsets and not expect everyone to come up with everything to be able to have the best product for the best possible situation. And that takes a lot of time and years. We've been at this for 6 years. So we built a rather large group. We've cultivated a certain culture I believe in, that we believe in. And so, depending on what it is, yeah, there's a rather thorough evaluation process if we think something's going to work or not. But we typically give people the freedom to find out what's going to happen. We might think something's not going to work, but we still want them to try it, especially if they're young. We want them to learn. Just because we might think something's going to fail, maybe it's better if it does go on the platforms and fails in a way, quote unquote, fail, whatever fail means. I mean, if someone tries something and they're able to take something they thought of from conceptualization to the finished product and it posts and it doesn't do well, so what? But at least they tried it, right? So there's a time and a place for everything. I'm a huge, I'd answer questions this way, which can make it confusing, but I'm a huge gray area guy. I think you got to live in the gray to do this job. If you try to make content black and white, it's just, you're not going to get where you need to go.
And I'm gonna maybe make you blush, Jason, but this is not a video podcast, so no one will see it. But I mean, the Chargers, it goes without saying, I think when you ask people who are some of the best social teams and content teams in pro sports, the Chargers is often their response, and rightfully so. And I think the Chargers obviously have this it's this unique personality, this culture, as you stated earlier. I guess just as much as you can, tell me how did that start? How did it come together? How documented is it? How does it evolve over the years? I'm sure the people help set it as well, but it does help to instill that culture and instill that process of, hey, we can try shit here, we can fail here, we can go outside the box here, or we kind of know the lines that we can play in. So just tell me on the background of this is who the Chargers are going to be. You came in right when they were coming up to LA, and we're kind of starting from scratch to some degree.
Yeah, I was the first one here, but I didn't cultivate what this is now. A team did that. I'd say that if you were if you're building a garden, I didn't put the plant in the seeds. I didn't put the seeds in this. I didn't put the seeds in, right? I didn't dig the hole. What I do is I water the plant. Now, that's what I've always done. I make sure the plant grows. This organization put the seeds in the dirt, and Megan Julian helped that plant grow by taking some chances and doing what she did. And now, yes, I oversee this entire thing, but she's a teammate. I don't look at it like a superiority thing at all. We do this together. We're in this together. With anybody else, same thing. So what I mean is, my role in this has always been to water the plant, to make sure that people are paid well, to make sure that people understand what we expect of them, to make sure the organization sees why we're beneficial from a monetization standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, that there's data to back up why we're driving significant traffic or audience development. This is all about generational fandom. So how you're able to find the younger generation of fan and cultivate that audience and turn them into someone who is passionate about the team. My job is to make sure that is communicated and understood for different groups and help other groups understand that. So we can continue to add resources and be successful and have the freedom to do what we do. This all started with really when Megan started posting. Megan is just brilliant. I mean, she's just brilliant at it. And I think she would take this as a compliment. I say a content psycho. She is so invested in it. And I say that as a compliment because I'm a psycho too. But then we got fortunate. We hired someone like David Bretto, who now is our director of creative video, you hire someone to do a job and he turns out to just be freaking like totally beyond anything you could have imagined. And then from there, yeah, there was parts of this that I did identify certain people that we needed to have here. And I flew and met with them and made sure they needed to be Chargers so we could build this into what we wanted to build it into. So Megan could have the support in video, which was my role. And now my role in overseeing it is, like I said, the plant's growing. It's just watering it and giving it enough sunlight.
And what are those things that really help guide a David, guide a Megan, so that everyone's kind of speaking the same language and saying, like, the Chargers are this, the Chargers sound like this, the personality Chargers is this, like, because it does work so well. And I know we talked a little about game presentation even as well, and how much does that play into the Chargers overall brand, and like, so how do you get it so that Megan, David, Ricky, all those guys can really speak the same language?
They speak the same language because they speak the same language. We you don't create a culture by talking about culture. You create a culture by having people that are like-minded, and then you have an organization that supports creativity. That creates culture. And then from there, like I said, it's watering a plant and giving it sunlight, meaning you're making sure that your department heads understand what they're responsible for and what they're expected to do. They're given the tools to be successful at it, and that you're cultivating talent. Because you have to be able to hire people to do a job. And then when you're trying to manifest the voice over video or younger people in a social department, so Megan isn't the one doing it every day, so she can have a life at some point, you have to be able to identify what of your voice is repeatable and how to repeat it, and then finding people who can create the product for it. It's not a matter of sitting in a room and telling people this is the voice. I don't think we've ever once had an open discussion about that, because it goes without saying, because what our goals are here, people like to tell us what our voice is, which I always find very interesting. We don't talk about it. We are here to humanize a brand, to connect a brand and its players to this audience, to this city, to cultivate a fan base, to create generational fandom. And that is what we talk about. The actions to accomplish those goals come from creating really good content, from understanding your audience, from understanding data, and having really smart people who know how to make really diverse content, right? And of course, our voice is funny. It's personable. We tweet very serious things in no capitalization, right? Like we try to be as if you know us. We want our brand to be attainable, to feel like you know who we are as the Chargers. But I've never sat in a room and been like, this is our voice, or Megan sat in a room and been like, this is our voice. I think it's always just been understood through what backs it up. You know what I mean? It's everything else that comes with it. I guess the other thing I'd say to that quickly is, you could have a voice and you can have a plan on social, but if you don't have a video team that can support it, then it dies because it's not consistent. I think what we've been able to do that might be unique is we've been very, very consistent across everything we do for years. And that comes from having really good people and an organization that understands how to prioritize creativity to get where you need to go.
Yeah. And we'll spend a couple minutes talking about how you think about the brand versus the product. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you guys are a football team and there are players that come and go, coaches, GMs come and go. The Chargers brand is always there. And also just the fact that you guys have a lot of fans of the Chargers, and that can mean a lot of things. It might mean that they really love the social media brand, and they may or may not even watch a game of football, or at least maybe some highlights. So when you're thinking about like building generational fandom, are you building fans of the Chargers brand versus fans of the Chargers football team? And I know that's a diluted question, but how do you think about the brand versus the product, and what you're ultimately trying to accomplish through these channels?
We're not the brand. The Chargers content team, social team is not the brand. The brand is this organization, a family run organization that cares deeply about the people that work here and its fans and its community and its players and its staff. What we are trying to do is create the best product that can stand out so people can see who we are. You're going to become a fan of our team if you're a football fan, hopefully, or maybe Justin Herbert's on your fantasy team. Or the other way you're going to become a fan of this team is through engaging creative content and having a voice that relates to the person next door to you, to someone who's on Reddit who might think, man, that they get it. That's cool. I respect that. I'm going to follow them. And maybe someone who's 10 years or 12 years old who sees a meme or sees anything. It's like, I like that. That's cool. And then they start looking at our players and they go, oh, I like these players because they've been humanized on our platforms, right? And then they come to a game and they have a great experience. And then you become a fan. Becoming a fan nowadays there's a variety of different ways you can be introduced to a brand. Our belief is the more we can do that's going to stand out above the rest is going to help us be introduced to people who don't know who we are. And the more we can do that, because we can't control product on field, we can only control what we control. And we have such tremendous group of players and staff that try to win every day. And our job is simply to do our best to highlight the personalities of the people that are here and make sure that no matter what, you can always come to our platforms and find that football is fun.
And is that a guiding principle? Is football is ultimately what we do? Because in some ways, like I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit here, but in some ways, the product of NFL teams, of pro sports teams, is not just the sport they play or the games they put on or the program. It's also the entertainment they produce, and all the time spent by fans watching and consuming this content and coming to love this content, whether it's watching Justin Herbert on Hot Ones or talking about a given play call during a game. And so is the end goal not necessarily to get someone to first discover the Chargers and then decide they want to get to the point where they are talking about the two deep in the secondary or whatever? In some cases, is the fact they enjoy the brand, enjoy the content, is that the pinnacle of fandom for some potential fans?
Yes, for sure. It can be a passive fandom. Just following us is important. Then you're going to have people who are more engaged. We try to create content for everyone. One way to look at it, we are primarily not a football X's and O's type of group. We do 80% of our content that you're going to see is probably not going to be football focused or very like on the field X's and O's driven. But we did dive into X's and O's this year. But when we did it, we went and signed Brett Coleman, who has 350,000 followers on YouTube, and signed him because he's known for his film breakdowns of football. So we went and got him to do it for us because you're going to cultivate a different audience. When we do things that are X and O's driven or whatever we're doing, it's not about us doing it. It's about finding the audience that wants to consume it and bringing that audience to us so that when we do it, it's able to get the return on the investment and be introduced to different people. There's a deeper layer to everything. In terms of just like, well, here's an X's and O's. We're going to have our team reporter sit down with the coach and they're going to talk. We would never do that. Not because there's anything wrong with it. There isn't. In our mind, we prefer to focus on finding the audience that does want to see that at a higher level. Because typically, now bear in mind, this isn't true for everyone, but football content has a ceiling.
Yeah.
Other content does not. So if you're trying to reach more people and get outside of your ecosystem, you're going to have to create non-football content, and a lot of it, which we do. And then your football content, if you want to not have a ceiling and you want to reach a broader audience, then you have to find the right people to partner up with to make sure it does get consumed. And that's really how we look at it.
Oh, I love that. A few minutes left here with Jason Lavine, VP of Content Production for the Los Angeles Chargers. I want to dive into that a little bit more too and double click. When you're thinking about how to allocate scarce resources, scarce time, only so much time in the day, only so many videos that the team can produce. Like, do you think about is there a world where it doesn't make sense to do football content, even though you're a football team, because that ceiling is there, and there is somewhat of an artificial ceiling for how people want to get into the X and O's. So is our time better spent allocating more resources toward these other things that can reach millions or billions of impressions? Like, how do you think about how's that come into play when you're allocating budget, resources, time, and even the prospects of partnership content as well, and what they want to be part of? So, like, is there a point where you need to also hit on some certain content pillars because you are a football team, you are an NFL team, or is it just like you're going after different cohorts of audiences? Like, how does this all come into play?
Well, when you're at a point when resources, you have a solid resource situation like we do, the way you develop that kind of depends on the factors that are present for your team and your organization. Now, our goal is to sell every piece of product that we have. We want to make as much money as possible. Content should be sold. Look at it like Barstool or Complex or whoever. Create the best possible product and sell that product. That's the goal. Customizable piece of content, branded content, whatever it is, sell it. So obviously what's sold will play a part, but then you're always going to have your foundational things that you're going to do no matter what. Like you're mic'd up. You mic'd up a player, you know you're going to use it. It's great content. When I think about what football content is access, which would be behind the scenes storytelling, that is something you can't find anywhere else. It's mic'd up, which you can't find anywhere else. It's Brett Coleman doing specific film breakdowns that are super nuanced and super technical to the diehard football audience that can gain the respect of that football audience that consumes it. That's football content to us. Football content to us is not two people who work for the team talking about it. It's just not. We have a podcast like Chargers Weekly that we do that is awesome. We don't do a lot of pods, but it is one of them that we do. It has Matt Money Smith, who's our play-by-play guy, and Chris Harry, who's a local TV reporter. And they are brutally honest about this team. If you're going to do it, you got to be able to talk about it. And they do on the pod. That's one place you can do it, So like we're super intentional, super intentional. So that's football. That's football content to us. And then the lifestyle stuff, we plan 1 billion of those things. What gets sold will probably determine what we do in some respects. And then you're always going to want to make sure you have enough room in your content plan and have enough resources that you can do the things you can't plan for. And once you can do that, then you're fine. If you have a cake and you're piecing those parts if you're splicing up the parts of the cake, you need to make sure that the cake is big enough that you can have the content that can't get sold. You're in the moment stuff that you can't plan for.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then you can build a cohesive plan. And again, that's all dependent upon your situation. If you're, I don't know, in New York or another place that it's a very different football audience. So you might do more content. In New England, they have a coach show with Bill Belichick. They have another show. They have another show. Like there's 3 television shows. It's not a priority for us here. Like our priority is if we're going to do football X's and O's content, it's like I said before, it's going to be access driven, or it's going to be so over the top nuanced that it's like really for that football audience. And then you're going to have your lifestyle, which really, lifestyle can be anything that just simply helmet off type content.
Right. And how does the team ops, coaching staff? I know we're on the precipice, or in this off season, you guys are going to get a new GM and a new head coach. And when that happens, like, does player access, become a question of like, how much are they going to like this? How are they not going to like it? What do they want to focus on? If we're not winning, should we tone down this a little bit or not do as much of this? Like, how much does that come into play, if at all, for you guys?
A lot, for sure. I mean, we certainly have no idea what the future holds. We're confident that we will adapt to whoever is here and what their preferences are. What we do is not more important than football. Our number one priority is winning football games and to support and show and demonstrate. But another huge goal is to generate fandom, consistent fandom that is not superficial. It is real, and you do that through generational fandom. So I believe those things should coexist. There's that winning football games and building a brand should coexist together, almost independently in some respects, and then in some ways completely intertwined. And there are probably times that even this season when we would lose a game and we would probably post something that our fans wouldn't enjoy, like those diehards, but we have sponsor obligations or we believe in what we're doing long-term. So we do it. And the uncertainty of what could come with future football leadership doesn't lead to stress or anything. not because we think we deserve what we didn't know. There could be dramatic changes coming. We have no idea. It's more of we love what we do, and being creative is not necessarily about like being creative is not always about creating the best possible product on the platform. It could be about how you work internally to work with people who don't understand what you're trying to do, right? Like creativity is just how you go about your day-to-day business, your attitude. And that's why we don't have any fears or concerns about the future, because no matter what happens, we always figure it out. And that is something I do say all the time around here, right? So that's for the most part how we feel.
No, it's exciting too. And when you look at teams across the league or across sports, it's like you don't know what their internal infrastructure looks like and what they're trying to do and what everyone like. So the best possible content, it might mean different things, different organizations.
Neil, that's exactly it. That's why I don't like when people say we're the best, because I think we're the best in our situation. I think this is product driven by situation driven, context driven. Like, yes, we're good at what we do, but I bet you if you put a lot of people in our situation, they'd also be good at what they do. Everyone does the best they possibly can. We're not special. We're lucky. We're fortunate to be able to keep a group together for a long time. And certainly, we come up with some good ideas, but that I don't like those Twitter rankings that come out that say, we're number one on Twitter. I don't like those things, because I don't think that's fair to the 32nd team on there, because you don't know their situation. You don't know what that person's going through. And we want to make the best possible product for our fans. And we are fortunate enough to be in a situation where this organization appreciates what we do. That's not everywhere. Some places don't get it, and I feel bad for them. And I tell anyone who's super creative, come work here. Shit, like, we are super fortunate to be in a place that allows us to expand what creativity means and work in an organization that allows us to try different things. And then the rest of it, sure, like, obviously, I'm not saying we don't have good ideas that I think help us stand apart. Of course, I do. There is a secret recipe to having a certain group together, but who is the best and what is not as important as why someone could be the best. And that is always a product of the situation you are in.
Yeah, no, that's really well put. Is there a benefit to at least having a reputation as not going to speak in superlatives here, but being good, in that players are more likely to trust that, hey, I'm going to engage as many mics up because Charter's going to make me look good. And same idea with sponsors and the partnership teams, and be like, hell yeah, we want to work with the Chargers, and hell yeah, we'll pay a premium because it's the Chargers, because we know they're good at what they do. Like, does that come into play a little bit?
That is the only part that matters. Right? That is what we care about. The only reason anything is valuable to us like that, here's how I'll explain it. And I've talked about this a lot around here. We wanted to always, I don't believe in rankings, but I want people to perceive us as the best. And the reason why you want that first is we need to cultivate the right voice and create a really good product that people would respect. And we do that because if you have two stand-up comedians, one's Kevin Hart and one's a no-name, and they both say the same joke, who's going to elicit a better response? It's going to be Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
We want to be the Kevin Hart in the space. We want to create the product that we want to have a reputation so good that we can make something that we don't even believe in. People are still going to think it's great because it's us. And that we do get nowadays. And that is very, very helpful to building something that can maintain no matter what happens. Is the audience trusts you. The people around you in the space trust that what you're making is the right thing when we're not even sure what we're making is the right thing, but they believe it is because that's the person who said it, because Kevin Hart made the joke.
Yeah.
He validates it. Our reputation, once it's validated, it's validated. And it remains validated because we don't make a lot of mistakes when it comes to what we do, but we don't make a lot of mistakes because people trust us. So that's why you fight so hard to have a certain reputation, not because we want a ranking above anyone else, but because of what it means to validate the product and then help you monetize it. And then, of course, reputation matters when it comes to working in this business. We're in Los Angeles. This is an extremely competitive market with a lot of sports teams and a very sophisticated audience to boot. And so we want to make sure that when we walk into a room, you understand that what you're getting here is different than what you're going to get at another football team or another sports organization in this market. We simply believe we are better at it than anyone else, and we're going to show you why. but that's not because we actually might think that we're better than anyone, but more because of the perception of it. And you have to play into that when you're working with partners because they want that. They want to work with the best. And then you mentioned players, of course. Players are the key. They have to believe in what you're doing. We made that video for Cameron Dicker a couple weeks ago for the Pro Bowl. That comes from trust because they believe that we're funny and we get it. And then that helps them see that what we do helps them because that helps them get Pro Bowl votes. We are a creative agency that supports the partnership group, that supports the players, that supports the football team, it supports the fans, every part of it. And perception, as you put it, or how someone believes you is the only reason we care about it. It is in no way because when we think about going to a league meeting in April because someone thinks they're less than us because of a ranking, no chance. I don't know if you can curse on this pod, but I was going to say no effing chance. Like we are all the same, built upon and become successful because of the situations we're in. But if we're going to be in the situation we're in and be perceived the way we're going to be perceived, then we need to ensure that we use it properly to help maintain who we are.
Yeah. And there's a certain amount of like self-fulfilling confidence there too. Like you want Justin Herbert to go out and say, I'm the best quarterback in the NFL. You want that. You want your team to be able to say, I'm the best social media manager in the NFL. It's self-fulfilling prophecy of I think I'm the best, therefore I'm going to act like the best, therefore I'm going to work hard and be the best. And it's a positive feedback loop.
100%. That's right. That's exactly the point. It's positive feedback reinforced. And so when people can see online and when people are like, man, the Chargers are great at what they do. Holy crap, the Chargers did it again. That just helps these young people who are learning this business who work here. It just helps them want to fight harder to be great because they see that initial reaction. And then I think one thing that can certainly help is, when we need to go find people that we want to work here, it's typically not that difficult. There's not like a strong introduction. Like I need to sell someone on it, right? They get it at this point. You come here, you understand what's happening and what we're doing. Now you got to come here and you got to prove it, right? But when we want to hire people, typically, being perceived good at what you do only helps in what you're saying, the self-fulfilling prophecy of reestablishing talent and finding talented people.
Yeah. One more thing with you, Jason, before we get this shareable stat, I promise I have so many more things I can talk to you about.
And keep going. I'm good, man.
Let's keep going then. So I want to talk briefly too about how that sort of there's not necessarily a pressure to it, but maybe there's a healthy pressure as well, especially with these tentpole things. Like, I mean, the biggest one, of course, is schedule release, and the Chargers have for years, and as well as other teams, have just kicked ass with that, and we seem to become more and more across sports. So when you guys there's a certain amount of the Chargers are gonna do something fire again this year, and there's a certain, and then on the other side for you guys, it's like, oh shit, we have a reputation to live up to. Like, what are we gonna do? We got to make sure that we produce some fire. So like, how those early conversations come about, and is there that healthy pressure? Again, to use that term.
There's a schedule release. Yes, there is a healthy pressure. As much as I try to tell everyone when we start that process, do not worry about that. They do. It's going to happen. When like ESPN is coming out here to interview us about our schedule release and what we're going to do, it's hard not for people to put a little pressure on themselves. I mean, it's really crazy the reaction these things have gotten, and then how people then expect what they expect from us. Yes, there is a pressure. They feel that pressure. I wish they didn't, but they do, and they shouldn't, or they shouldn't internally, because no matter what they do, if they have the right process, the results don't matter. We don't control results. We just control process. We control our own actions. So we're going to be the best we possibly can to come up with the best possible idea. And what happens past that, we don't control. So we're not going to worry about it, but you do worry about it. And yes, we've had 2 consecutive seasons of doing a specific type of piece. If we do something else, will it be as good? That's really tough to say. That was pretty good. Do you do the same thing and run it back for a third time? I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of conversations that happen around that, and the idea of the pressure. That's probably the one thing that I think people feel pressure on. It's not anything else. But that one, because it's one consistent thing that we have done very well, there's for sure, I think, a creative pressure that people feel that we try to, relieve and make sure they understand, like, do whatever you got to do. Like, we'll come up with the best idea and it will be what it is.
And I guess not to ask too big of a loaded question, but what what is the ROI of a schedule release piece? Like we put so much into it. It has so much of this perception of like throughout the league and engagement. At the end of the day, it's a lot of engagements, a lot of impressions. Maybe some people might monetize it with a partner. It solidifies your reputation as a creative team. Might maybe activates the brand to some degree as well. Like why do we put so much into it, and what do you guys get out of it?
Look, if we create a good product, the byproduct of that is always going to be that it helps our reputation. But in no time are we concerned about that at all. Our number one goal is objectively business focused. We are trying to make sure enough people see it so more people will become fans of this team and buy tickets. It is awareness around a schedule so you can come out to SoFi Stadium and enjoy this organization and this team and celebrate it. That is our number one and our only objective. Everything else is not even thought of. We do not care about that. I did just say that obviously there's a creative pressure that comes of it. Of course, an internal human being is going to feel pressure to create something great and come up with something great. Mm-hmm. But collectively, our focus is not on holding up our reputation. Collectively, our focus is on this organization and helping them. We want to do the best we possibly can because we want to sell tickets and we want more people to be fans of this team. And if we do our jobs properly, then that will happen.
No, I think that's well put for sure. And you see the schedule is becoming one of these big tent poles when you guys can hit a grand slam, to use some baseball parlance. Like are there opportunities throughout the season? And I think the NFL has done this intentionally, cultivated these various temples and make it feel like every couple of weeks there's something big to happen, even if it's not during the season. So like when you're thinking about planning out content, especially some of the longer term things that require more than a day's notice, like do you have to think about, are there 5, 6, 7, 8 things that are like these are the things where we get to take big swings and get to put more time into it?
100%. Yeah. And we all know what those things are, right? Some of those are going to be determined by your team's success. So if your team is heading to the playoffs, you understand the opportunity that could exist there. We see that obviously in a new regime coming in, there's a huge opportunity for us, huge opportunity coming for us at some point soon to do some really cool stuff. And we're very excited about that opportunity. Of course, the draft is another opportunity. Free agency, that's not the same. Free agency, it depends on the team. And if you're going to sign people, it's an opportunity, sure. But that's more of like out of your control. Draft is the draft. Everyone's got picks. Everyone knows it's coming. So fire off your best stuff, right? Like have enough bullets in the chamber. And training camp, same thing, right? Have enough bullets in the chamber because you know it's coming. Everyone's got the same situation. And then the season comes and then a little bit is out of your control. It's product dependent, situation dependent. Mm-hmm. But if you have the right foundational approach to what you do and you have a brand voice that can remain consistent, then you always have opportunity. There's 100%. Schedule release is something everyone looks at. But then there's a schedule release and draft are the two things in the offseason that everyone has at the same time in the same type of situation, right? The rest of it's a little product dependent. But again, if you creativity, just like, how do I put it? It's like our system just flows. It's an engine, right? So it's just like, okay, we can't do it here because we're not allowed to because it didn't go the way we wanted to. Okay, take that idea and morph it for the next thing that comes up, right? Like there's always going to be the next opportunity. The biggest thing is like we're not worried about the now. We're always worried about the future. We're always worried about what's the next thing we're going to do, not the thing we're doing now or the thing in the past, because you can't control if it's already posted. You're on to the next, So yeah, we have a strong understanding of those tempos as every team does. And by the way, not to be long-winded, but we marvel at what other teams do. I mean, incredible amount of respect for these other teams and their creativity because it inspires us every day.
And the nature of sports too is so cyclical, and if you don't like, it can be really easy to get monotonous. There's you're going to have training camp. It's going to happen every year around the same time. You're going to have draft every year. Like, do you constantly have to sort of intentionally disrupt yourselves, or if something works, I mean, to the point, like we talked about earlier, like schedule release, you guys did something similar years in a row. Whether it's voice, personality, content plans, like, is it like, hey, we did this last year, so we got to do something different this year? Or is it like, hey, well, let's just make tweaks? Like, how do you think about that, of not getting to that monotonous rut that can become part of sports?
Well, there's a lot of ways to do that. It's a great question. Great question. We think a lot about it. So take Hot Ones, for example. First year we did it, it blew up. Second year we did it, the numbers weren't as good. Were the numbers not as good because of the product? I don't know. Maybe it's the players. We didn't have enough bigger players in it. Maybe we didn't promote it right. Maybe we can change up the style when we do it. So like that's one of those things that we would bring back for a third year. We don't bring a lot of things back for 3 consecutive seasons, but we would for that because we believe in it. But you're more looking at like the other ways to make a product successful versus the product itself, because those things are always evolving. Or you're going to have a situation like hype videos. But I've done hype videos for 12 years, but the person making them now has only done them for one. So maybe he has different ideas, right? So it's monotony for me and for Megan and for Tyler and for David and for Allie, but it's not monotonous for the people who are young. So if we push them in the right direction, maybe they come up with something that we're not even expecting. And that's the thing, is like, it's not about what we want to do as a 5 group. It's a matter of what we want to do, the group of 30, and hearing those ideas and giving them the space to try different things, because you just never know. And yeah, like we do, like the core group of us that have been here together and worked together for a long time, we know we have a good belief in what's going to work. And we know that in the moment, we're going to be able to come up with some good stuff. We know that. But our job is to cultivate the next generation of talent. And so if you can remove monotony from allowing other people to try things, because I was just thinking about this the other day, because if we walk into a training camp next year with a new coach, I'm like, oh, all right, so we're going to mic the coach on day one. We've done that 30 times. You know what I mean? But it's like, that's not new to, 23-year-old X who works here, So maybe they have a new way of doing that. And so you have to, draft's a great example of that, because draft, it's the same thing. So yeah, I want to challenge myself to think about it differently, and I will. And then I'm also going to challenge the team to share their ideas, because they're going to see it differently than I've seen it. And it won't be monotonous for them. Monotony, traveling is monotonous for me now, but for them, it's like the greatest thing in the world. Like they get to go on the team plane, and like they're a part of the team, and they're on the field and in these great environments. But for me, I've done it for so long. There's new things that challenge and inspire me, like game presentation, or moving into a new facility and doing that studio. That's not monotonous to me. That's my challenge. So everyone's kind of got their own monotony and own rhythm. And like, you got to inspire people who haven't done things before to try things, because they haven't done them.
Yeah. When you're thinking about too, like around what, like, it's easy to say this worked or this didn't work. I mean, that can mean a lot of things, though. And we've become a lot more analytics driven in the past, several years during the time you and I got into social. And in some ways that's good. In some ways it can be a little bit, deleterious if you're thinking about things like we're building long-term fans, and whether something, popped off in the feed may or may not matter as much if something has a strong effect on building that fan for life. So like when you're thinking about what works, whether it's cross-platform, and different goals, different objectives, like how is it all coming to play? How do you balance sort of the art and science of it?
Well, we are a huge data-driven team, and we're fortunate. One of Megan's roles here, she oversees like content performance, and we have Casey Perez and a whole team of youngsters that work together on. We take in our own data. And this is not only impression tracking as it relates to revenue-driven opportunities, but also just we track and price everything. So we have an understanding of the value of our product. And then if it's not sold, we have an idea of what we think it should be doing in impressions. And then we look at weekly, we have goals that we set ourselves, and they're across digital. We have goals, social following goals, audience goals, engagement goals, demo goals. 12 to 24 is a significant audience for us. So we try to understand how people are consuming that product if you're 12 to 24. And we look at like, okay, this YouTube short did 50% retention over a minute for 18 to 36. Why did it do that? And you got to understand those things. It all depends on the piece of content and what you're trying to achieve, right? Like when we think about digital and posting on our site, our focus is editorial and photo, not video. And so we're going to have very different goals. We're going to try to understand those barometers based upon what we think could be successful
Mhm.
And we're going to change what we do and adapt what we do based upon what people are consuming and what the data is telling us.
Is there like this is kind of a forward-thinking question as well around the importance of owned and operated platforms. I think we're seeing that this kind of play out now, even more so, heading forward as you see the NBA prioritize its app more than ever. You see, the RSN model, which is not as important in NFL, of course, becomes diluted. There's a more importance and priority placed on direct relationships with fans and not quote unquote like using rented real estate of social media to use a pejorative. Is there are there these things that you're thinking about from your seat and the team and what your team is being put to work on of, you know, we need to also think about these other platforms and these different ways to connect with fans beyond this
Yeah,
individual platform or beyond social platform in general.
100%. Like it's renting versus owning, right? We rent property on Twitter. We rent property on YouTube. We rent property on Facebook, on Instagram. We own our site. We own our app.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a priority in making sure that if you're a homeowner, right, versus a rental property, it's going to be a little different in how you view it, how you monetize it. We put a lot of thought into how we do our digital work. We're fortunate to have an incredible senior writer in Eric Smith, a junior writer, Omar Navarro, Michael Gonzalez, our coordinator of digital content. Like we have a great group of people who are working on cultivating the proper SEO and the proper editorial, the proper posting schedule. We have ways to go for sure. We're not as good on owned and operate, not because of their talents or because of the product. The product's great. It's just a matter of getting more people to that property. And we have to cultivate ways to do that. We have to be super creative and intentional about that. So we can do that. Versus something on social where, we have a pretty good handle on. But like I said, our focus on our owned and operated is always going to be to create unique experiences for our fans, to make sure they have a positive experience and to make sure that our editorial and our photo galleries are always what people want to see and they're top of mind and they're easy to find.
Is there a straight line that can exist between the content that pops off on social and the content that can then drive people to the owned and operated?
Yes, I'll give you a perfect example. So look at BuzzFeed or any of those places. They do this extremely well, but like Cameron Dicker video goes viral on social. We put up an editorial that shows that is just the editorial version of it, which is the internet reacts to Cameron Dicker's viral video. Mm-hmm. So when people search it on Google, we should come up. There's creativity that can be applied anywhere. We should be reacting to we should be reactive in nature on digital, just like we do anywhere else. And yes, you apply the same creativity, it's just created differently.
So what are those factors that can ultimately get someone to say, I want to go chill with the Chargers on their platforms versus I'm going to keep scrolling the feeds and, I will stop my thumb when the Chargers comes up because I like their content?
Well, that's going to be how good is the content, how good's the voice, right? How out there are you? Like, that's what it's going to come down to. Like, that's why on social, we are so out there because we are trying to get people to stop their feeds in that split second you have to gain their attention and get them to follow us.
But ultimately, like the goal is not necessarily, is there a long-term perspective where they're going to get that same type of content on owned and operated, or like is editorial kind of its own category that it's just
editorial? Yeah, editorial is very football focused because people who are coming to your platform are fans of this team. You're going to have a very different experience. You need to have really good football content on your site. You need to be writing for your fans in a way that they want to consume it. You can't expect, it's not like social where just a random person's going to find you. It's not about the random. It's about the people who know you. And in that instance, you have to know that you create the product for them. It's a very, very different piece of content.
No, that makes sense. And something for us to watch going forward, I think, as well as hopefully a more diverse fan base and different types of fans come to the owned and operated and may,
right. Well, right. But sorry to cut you off. I was going to say that if someone, that's why social is important though, because you're just getting them in your ecosystem.
Yeah.
And if they become a bigger fan, hopefully they do go to our site and start because they become more of a football fan, right? If you don't get introduced to us by football, then at some point, hopefully you will love Justin Herbert because we've humanized him on our platforms. Mm-hmm. And then you might go to our site to read about him or read 5 things you didn't know about Justin Herbert or whatever we come up with that we're writing. And so you're going to take on a very different experience, and your journey to those platforms is going to be different depending on who you are. We just like to be ready for all those fans and all those different situations. That's no different than any team. It just might be different for the Dallas Cowboys, who are typically number one in digital because they have such a loyal and large following. That's no knock on our fan base, because our fan base, by the way, is wildly passionate, and I love them for all of their passion. They are the best. They are very online, and um, the more we're able to create generational fandom, the more we're going to create a volume to our site.
One more thing on this topic, Jason, and then maybe one more thing, and then I promise I'll go to the shareable stat. But this is awesome, and I think in your role and in the teams that you oversee, like how expansive are these various touch points that you can have with fans now? And really, I think you and I have talked about this maybe offline a little bit too, about the mind share you can have of a fan. Like when they wake up in the morning, how can we help them think about the Chargers? Do we want them to wake up with us and they see something, or maybe they see a refrigerator magnet, and then they go to work and they step off on their welcome mat, and then they have a Chargers keychain, and then they have something to talk about with their at the water cooler with their coworkers. Like what are all these various touch points that you can have an effect over, so that you do take up a lot of their day, and in a good way, and when it comes time to start some small talk with someone in their cubicle, that they want to talk about the Chargers, whatever that may be.
Well, I think the way we look at it is we want you to talk about the team. We want you to own our product. We want you to have a keychain and all of that. But then also, if you can discuss our Cameron Dicker video, then great. It gives you another thing to talk about around the water cooler, right? There's always a different way to talk about it. So that's why, we're always trying to create such a cool product, because being a fan of this team means being proud of this team, being proud of the colors you wear. And you can be proud for a variety of reasons. It can be the product on the field. It can be what we do on social. It could be a video we made. It could be anything. And we just want to create enough talking points for people that they do have something to talk about. And yeah, of course, like buy a keychain, buy our merch, and you got to come up with cool ways to do merch. We did a incredible merch collab this year with the Crenshaw Skate Club. And that was another opportunity to try to create a new touch point for fans to buy our merchandise. And we have to continue to do those things. I mean, having a physical presence is different than having a large digital presence, and certainly something that we talk a lot about around here.
And even I'm picturing in my head now, like a Dicker the Kicker like T-shirt line that rips off that video that you guys made, and how that can all kind of interplay together in that sense.
Of course, yeah. There's always of course, you make an anime video. There's next steps to that, right? Like how can you take it to the next level? And certainly that's always something we're trying to do. Like that's what everyone's trying to do. That's marketing 101 in a way, right? And so I think everyone in every sports team and every brand is trying to achieve that, and trying to ensure that you're always surrounded by the ecosystem of that brand. And we just have to continue to find ways to do that.
So maybe or maybe not watch out for a Chargers theme series on Crunchyroll. No, I'm just that's me saying that, not Jason. One last thing, Jason, then we will get to the first, I promise. And that is the idea of having a plan for when the team is winning. If the team were to make a Super Bowl run, I think everyone kind of has maybe like that drawer with a lock on it that's like, this is the plan that we have for when we start kicking ass and make a Super Bowl run. Like, do you guys think about that? Do you have that? And how important has that been throughout your career?
Yeah, we have it. It's as simple as that. We have it. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. When the time comes, we'll be ready.
And how, what are those signifiers that you look for of this is when we start to dip into the things that we can do? Like, is it just we look like we're gonna be a playoff team versus hey, let's wait till we clinch, let's wait till we get to the playoffs? Like, are there signposts along the way that are like, okay, let's start putting this winning plan into practice?
I mean, you're always building a winning plan. You're building both. You build the plan for the unfortunate circumstances of losing, and then you build a plan for winning. Having a plan for making the Super Bowl is something that most people have. We do have a plan. It's not like you wouldn't build it out completely because we're not there. You don't know the situation you're in or exactly what you want to do or the talent you might have internally. But yeah, winning. Like, I'll say this though, and this is important. Like, I say this to everyone here. I said at one point this season when we unfortunately weren't winning as much as we had hoped, which is, we didn't hire you all to make content all the time when we're winning, because anyone can create content when you're winning. You all are here because you're the best at what you do. And that becomes far more challenging when a team isn't living up to expectations. So put your creativity to work now more than ever. Winning is easy. Creating content when you win is very easy. Creating content when you're losing, when fans are upset, now that's a challenge. And that is why typically when we look to hire people, we look at places, we try to find the creative people who have been in some environments that have been challenging. Because if you can create it in a challenging environment, you can create in an easy environment, in a winning environment. And like I said, having a plan for winning, we have that. Everyone sees that play out almost when we do win. It's the memes. And then from there, it just drives out to, it's just let your creativity take over, let the situation dictate what you're going to do, and then let the in the moment content that you're going to come up with that you can't plan for take over. And then for the Super Bowl, we do know what that first tweet would be. We know what that would be. It's been ready. It will remain ready. And I hope we get to use it.
That's awesome. You and me both look forward to the day when you and your staff and your team are on that precipice. But Jason, we're going to have more fun with you coming up in our first and second segment. First episode of Shareable Stat coming up right now. Just phenomenal stuff from Jason Lavine, VP of Content Production for the LA Chargers. Cannot think of enough, but stick around because you're going to learn a lot more. And here's some more good stories from Jason in our first and second segment, so stick around for that. Tons of good substance still to go. But first, this episode's Shareable Stat. This episode's Shareable Stat comes from looking at the past NFL regular season. And if you look at Instagram growth in particular, that's what we honed in on, using CrowdTangle, we saw that from the first day to the last day of the regular season, the Philadelphia Eagles led all teams in growth by a significant margin. They grew their followers 24% over the course of the regular season. That is pretty astounding. They were not that far ahead of the second place team, but there was a big drop off after that. The second place team, as you may be able to guess, is the Kansas City Chiefs, with all their storylines going to this season. But how do the Eagles do it? First, it's a pretty cool sign to see that despite Instagram being around for all this time, despite NFL teams being on it for so long and kicking ass at it, there's still that much room to grow where you can increase your followers 24% season over the course of a single regular season. Now, of course, you can look at how much do followers matter as much these days. Instagram certainly still plays a bigger role than it would, say, on TikTok, although it does matter on TikTok as well, as social media platforms go to a more recommendation-based algorithm, and followers is only one part of it. But still, the fact that Eagles are able to go 20%, how they do it? Well, of course, you have to have a winning team, and they, for the most part, until toward the end of the season when they started to drop off a little bit, had a winning team and a winning season. They have diehard fans, but really a lot of through collabs, through creative, consistent content. But if you look at a lot of their collab posts with influencers, with even other NFL teams, with other Philadelphia teams, I think most organizations in sports now are using the collab feature pretty consistently in sports. And we talked to Jason. You'll hear more about their collaboration with the Hot Ones coming up in the first and 10 segment. But really thinking about how when you're creating content, when you're creating content plans, when you are just executing across social media, how can we use partnerships to really leverage our ability to reach fans that either don't know about us yet or aren't fans of us yet, maybe just casual observers. So certainly with other teams in your city, especially if they're out of season and they're not quite as competitive, but even if they are in season, still an opportunity for a rising tide to raise all boats, and then really having that focus on partnering with content, whether that's corporate partners, certainly that's going to drive revenue, but also partners that are just content partners. They have good content and they have an affinity for your team, and vice versa. You like their content and they match up with kind of the vibe that you want to throw out there, and maybe some creative content ideas. Really thinking about someone that is in your content team, in your social team, in your media team, whatever it might be, focusing on partnerships from a day-to-day basis. We're seeing more directors of influencers or creators, or it's becoming part of the role of someone that's a digital media manager or digital media leader, social media leader, is to really focus on how can we cultivate these valuable partnerships that can help us reach new fans. So I'm not going to ramble on any further, but certainly something that stood out. But looking overall, the shareable stat, something to think about, is that the Philadelphia Eagles led all NFL teams in the regular season for follower growth on Instagram with a whopping 24%. All right, that's just a shareable stat, but more importantly, stick around because you're going to have a lot more fun and learn a ton more from Jason Lavine in our first and 10 segment. Right back with Jason Lavine, Vice President of Content Production for the LA Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers. I don't know which you guys prefer, LA or Los Angeles. Like both the same.
Okay.
But Jason, you kicked ass in the interview. Are you now ready for a little first and 10?
Hit it. Let's go.
All right, number one. You, just like my father, went to Northeastern University, out there in Boston. Really fun college town. So this is kind of open-ended, but just tell me about the Northeastern experience. You know, what it was like going to school there. I know my dad always loves the work co-op program, wherever it's called. So tell us
Yeah.
about Northeastern.
Yeah, work co-op was cool. It's a really cool program. If you don't know about it, 5 year school. You spend it's freshman, sophomore, middler, junior, senior. You spend a good amount of time getting work experience. I highly recommend it to anyone. If I had to apply there today, I probably wouldn't get in. I mean, it's a really, really good school. I'm fortunate to go when I did. My dad went there too, which was cool. Um, and I have nothing but good things to say about the city, the people. Um, it was a great, great place to go to college. No complaints.
And how was the basketball team when you were there, since you were, broadcasting a lot of those games?
We were okay. We were okay.
Number two for Jason. Tell me, this is like a fun one. Tell me your favorite question or prompt when you're interviewing a job candidate.
Depends what it is, but if it's like a leadership role, I like to ask someone if they are a leader and they're coming here to be one, what did they perceive leadership to be before they were one? And what did it end up becoming when you were one? So I think those are two very different things. And I like to understand that. And I like to understand what causes someone stress. I'll ask anyone that. I want to know what gets you riled up.
Yeah. How have you enjoyed becoming a leader and not being, in the trenches quite as much and holding a camera and being on the keys? Like, it's not everyone's like peak of their career is becoming a manager of people, and that's okay.
It changes, right? As the department gets bigger and the oversight seems to get larger in some respects, then it changes. I think the biggest thing about leadership is certainly it's about managing the people inside your department, but it's being a good teammate to the people outside of it. And those soft skills are really, really important. Something that I really had to work on in my 30s because I didn't really develop them in my 20s. And I still have probably a long way to go. I think if you probably ask some people around here, they'd probably say I'm an abrasive person. They might not love me too much. So I got some work to do. And then maybe some people would tell you that I'm passionate and I love what I do, I think leadership is uncomfortable. Is certainly when you first become a leader, it's uncomfortable. I've enjoyed the process, but I've enjoyed it because I've been surrounded by people who have supported me and I'm surrounded by good teammates who work with me. And that's made it really, really enjoyable. There is a certain, I live a dream every day because I get to work with people that I really, really enjoy working with who are like-minded. And so that makes the rest of it fairly easy.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that answer. That's awesome to hear. Number three for you, Jason. Tell me your favorite social media post, and also if something is different, your favorite sponsor content piece so far in your time with the Chargers.
Favorite content sponsor piece, probably Hot Ones. That is a dream to do that. And his favorite post is tough, man. There's been so many that Megan and her team have done that I'm just like, I marvel at what they do. It's tough to find a favorite. Maybe my favorite this year, because there's been a good amount. I'd say my favorite this year. Typically they send memes to me for like I technically approve them, like just try to give the sign off of like, okay, this is cool, but I'm not too heavily involved. But there was something they did after the Bears game when we smoked the Bears. They did incredible meme that I did not see. They just kind of came up with it and did it. And I loved it because they knew they could do it. And I loved it because it was great and I had nothing to do with it. So that's something that stands out to me of just like, holy crap, they're just so good at what they do. They're just incredible. And it's always good. I love being reminded on a daily basis that they don't need me to be successful. That makes me feel really good.
I love that. That's awesome. I guess because we didn't get to touch on the interview too much in brief, like 60 seconds or less, 90 seconds or less, or whatever. How has the Hot Ones come together? Because it's such a cool partnership and really cool, and it resulted in great content.
Took a lot of work. Spent a lot of time on that one. A lot of negotiation, finding the right partners and Chris and Melanie and Sarah and obviously Sean at Hot Ones for their partnership. Took a lot of time. I mean, I bought tickets to Complex Con, went out to Complex Con. I stood in line to meet Sean and I gave him the 30-second pitch on who we were,
Mhm.
just like anyone else would. And I guess it worked. And from there, it just developed. That is and still remains probably my favorite thing that we've done.
Very, very cool. It's fantastic content. Highly recommend anyone listening to this to go check it out if you haven't seen it. All over, their YouTube or wherever you want to go and consume that content. It's awesome stuff. Number four for you, Jason. This is gonna be an interesting one. Tell me like your favorite guiding principle or mantra when it comes to content. What's sort of like that line that sticks in your head of this is our guiding principle. Let's start North Star.
Shoot. Well, we have I spend so much more time now. Like we have a department philosophy, a credo type of thing that's like we want people to be their best selves and be super creative. So we have a whole thing, and then we lay out standards for each level in the department so they understand on a daily basis not just what's expected of them, but what's expected of their leaders. And so I spend a good amount of time there more than I do on the content part of it because I think as we talked about during the interview, we don't really sit there and go, this is our voice. It's more of like we just want to create really fun, engaging content, right? So my focus tends to be more on what can we do as human beings to be the best possible versions of ourselves when we come in the building.
No, I love that. That's awesome. I think that's a great way to look at it. Number five, for Jason. This can be a fun one here. Tell me the most memorable game you've been at as a fan.
Yeah. Okay.
So not for work, as a fan.
Yeah. Well, I'm a diehard Mets fan, so it's obviously Mets.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think which one. Uh, the Robin Ventura Grand Slam double to beat the Braves in 2002, maybe, or one. That was amazing. Thinking, I forget what year it was, but there was a game I went to with my parents. It was fireworks night in July. And we were down 10-1 to the Braves going to the bottom of the eighth. Mike Piazza ended up hitting a 3-run home run down the left field corner at Shea Stadium, and I'll never forget it. Um, that for sure stands out as a memory that I'll have forever. And then probably the other one, I was at the first Mets no hitter, Johan
Oh
Santana.
wow. I was
Yeah,
thinking in my head about where you stood on that of the right decision to leave him in.
yeah, it was the greatest thing that ever happened. I mean, I'll never forget that night. Calling my dad to tell him is something I'll never forget. It was
Uh,
yeah, those three definitely stand out. All Mets, of course, because they're my favorite team.
some great ones there. Well, as a long-suffering Padres fan, I hope one of our two franchises can win a World Series here in the near future.
Yeah, I do anything for it.
Number six, we talked a little about this just you and me offline. Talk about work-life balance when working for an NFL team. Like, what have you learned? What would you tell others about just trying to have that balance?
I would tell others to figure out what makes their balance be their balance because that doesn't mean you have to leave at 5 p.m. every day for work-life balance. Work-life balance comes in what you find peacefulness in, what makes you happy, and doing those things, no matter what they are important.
Hmm.
I always say, like, I make the joke with my parents, but like during the Mets season, staff knows this. The baseball game is going on every day. 4 p.m. That Mets game is on. You can come in, we'll talk, but I'm watching the Mets at work. It's happening because it makes me happy. Like that's work life balance to me. Doing the things that make you happy, either at work or not at work. And as long as you do whatever is important to you, then that's great. I would highly recommend to anyone getting into this business to work their ass off if they want to accomplish anything. And if they think they can get anywhere in life working 9 to 5, they got something else coming to them. You got to bust your ass if you want to get somewhere in this world. Doesn't mean you got to work 9 to 7 p.m., 8 to 7 p.m., 8 to 8 p.m., 8 to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. It means you got to find what works for you as an individual, as a human, that makes you happy and do those things. And then if you do that, it will all work out.
Yeah, and the beauty of this work of being in sports too is that there's such a fine line between what is work and what isn't work. It's passion. Like you get excited to do that. And yes, there are some times during those long hours when it does feel like work, but a lot of times it doesn't, and it's part of what you enjoy doing, and that's a big part of
Yeah,
it.
I mean, even last night, Megan and I are texting back and forth at like 9:45 p.m. Some stuff we saw on social that we liked or didn't like. Like that's I don't know if it's always the healthiest thing to do that, but like it's kind of like what we enjoy. I don't know. It's all about the person, the individual. I've never liked on social when people, whoever they are, who have a following, who try to tell someone what it means to have a work-life balance when that's an individual thing.
Yeah.
Having the idea of it is important, but what makes you happy is what matters. And I don't like that that has to mean leaving at 5 p.m. every day. I don't know why you can't be happy working hard and doing things you like to do outside of work, you know? They shouldn't be independent of each other.
Yeah, there's this paradigm for better or for worse that really came up in the 20th century, I guess, or before you and I, where it was like you clock in, you clock out, you hate Mondays, and you can't wait till the weekend. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can, if you're in a job that you enjoy around people you enjoy, it can be an exciting thing to come to work, quote unquote.
Yeah, and like take your breaks, man. Like when you get out, get out. Like I'm not telling people to work till they die here. Like take your breaks. Do what you got to do. You got to police yourself. You got to know when it's time to put your hand up and say, I need a break.
Yeah.
We always say like we're not expecting someone to come to work every day and give 100% of 100% of themselves. If you only have 40% to give at work, give 40%. We understand that. If you got to come in at 10 a.m. one day because you need some more sleep, that's fine too. Work-life balance starts with the idea of at work, you have to be a good teammate. You have to be accountable to the people you work with and to yourself. And you need to be a selfless, humble individual who is there to help the people around them as much as helping themselves. And then when you leave work, do what you got to do to make yourself right. Not so you can come to work and be good, just so you're a good human, right? See your family, talk to your family, go to a Mets game, go to Disneyland, whatever those things are. Police, be an agent of your own success.
I like that a lot, Jason. Number seven, speaking of stuff outside of work, tell me besides a Mets game, tell me the best show you've watched recently. If there's any show on Netflix, Hulu, whatever you're binging, or if you watch no shows, a movie, what's something that sticks out for you that you can recommend to our audience?
What have I watched? Oh, the last thing I watched in detail, and it's been the season's always tough, is I mean, everyone's seen it, I think, but The Bear. The Bear is my favorite show. It is just it is so freaking good. Obviously, that spoons or forks episode from this last season, like episode 7, there's nothing like that. Or the Two Fishes episode, that is the most chaotic, just grueling 30 minutes of television. I love it.
Definitely a very good one. And if someone still has somehow not seen it, or just go ahead and watch it again because it's awesome. And hopefully we get to see it soon.
I did actually. I just rewatched like 5 seasons of The West Wing. That show holds up. I love West Wing. Aaron Sorkin's brilliant. West Wing's so good. If you haven't seen West Wing, watch West Wing.
I have not watched that show myself, so maybe your recommendation means I have to give it a try.
You have to. It's so good.
I like it. All right, number 8 for you, Jason. It's time for our food question. I always ask a food question. Tell me the best meal to get in LA and where to get it, and also a bonus part: the food or restaurant you miss the most from New York.
There isn't one restaurant I miss in New York. I think I just miss being able to walk down the street and grab a pizza slice or a bagel that I really like. It's just like you can get it anywhere. Here it's harder. Food here, there's a restaurant. It's very expensive. I like go if my parents pay for it. But it's called Damian's. It's in downtown LA. I freaking love that place. I've been there like 3 times now. My dad loves it too. My mom loves it. It's so good. Again, like maybe, make sure your parents pay for it if you're going, but holy crap, is it good.
So give us an idea. What's on the plate? What do you order there?
It's a chef from Mexico City. So it's like it's like I don't know how to describe the cuisine. It's a Mexican cuisine. It's so good. Just the flavors, the plating. It's awesome.
Very nice. Well, I will try to get my parents to take me there sometime. Number 9 for you, Jason. Tell me what does the off season look like for you? What are those things that have to get done? Those primary projects that are a big part of the off season for you guys. And the running joke, of course, is there's barely any off season in the NFL, but hopefully there's a little bit. But what are those things like? These are the 3, 4, 5, 6 big things that we need to get done during the off season.
For me, it's going to be making sure that we have a really cool content studio at our new facility. Making sure that we got to kill this new regime content. We bring a new coach, new GM, and all that. We got to be all over that. It's a tremendous opportunity for us to be relevant in the market, and so we're looking forward to that. And then from there, schedule release, draft, like it's just great opportunities for us to continue to do what we do. I mean, most important objective in the off season is give people an opportunity to regroup, refresh, get their minds right. So they can be the best possible versions they can be here. So we do those things, we're gonna be okay.
And to something we talked about earlier a little bit, is there really a very limited amount of retrospective and it's more like looking ahead?
We're retrospective in the moment. You have to do it in the moment or it's not going to happen. You can't go back after the season and try to regroup on a season. I think that's why we're so fortunate to have weekly emails that come to us from our content performance team that tell us how we're doing so we can react. Because if you try to go back after the season, it's really tough. So we have a pretty good handle on what kind of happened this year. But then if it's not content related, there's so many other things you have to look at, like process, communication, how people work together. We got to look at all those things to continue to refine who we are as a department so we can just become smarter, faster, and better.
No, that's well put for sure. All right, last one for you here, Jason. In brief, this might be the hardest question I'm going to ask you though. What industry trend, or I guess running trend right now that you think is most top mind for you in the SM sports space, and what do you think we'll be talking about that 1 year from now, about a trend 1 year from now?
Oh, I don't know if I'm your guy on this.
Not necessarily like a trend like a meme or something like that, but like a certain platform or a behavior or a content format, or even just a mandate for a content team.
No, I think you're going to continue to see players own their own content. That's just going to be that's what's going to continue to happen. Players are going to become more independent entities. And how we adapt as content teams to work with them is going to be super important because you're not going to be able to just do a podcast with three guys on the team. They're not going to go for it. If they're going to do a podcast, they're going to go work with Wave Sports and do what the Kelseys did and get paid $1 million. It's just not, they're not going to work with us. So our content has to adapt with the time. So that's something it's just going to continue to evolve. I think that is probably where my focus is now, is thinking about how do we fit into the bigger picture, right? Do we create the content for them in their individual platforms? Can we become big enough as an agency to do that? Those are all things we have to look at.
Do you think as an industry, are we heading toward that inflection point where there's going to be this cross-pollination of things?
I mean, you have to be big enough to do it. I mean, I'd love to be the creative agency for the players across the board, but they have agencies to do that. Right. I think it's going to be really interesting. I don't know where this is heading 3 to 4 or 5 years from now. If it will be as big or as important, I don't know that yet. We're going to find out. But I think what we're going to always try to do is remain nimble and be the best we can be within the situation that we have.
Yeah. It's a really great talking point to think about in the months, days, years ahead, for sure. But Jason, kicked ass in your first and 10. You got into the end zone, stretched the ball over the pylon. Now your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform or platforms they're on, and why they're following.
Well, I'm going to tell you to follow people who work in this department. Mm-hmm. So follow the Chargers, obviously, at Chargers. Follow Tyler Pino, our Senior Director of Production. He's the best, at Tyler Pino 92. David Bretto. Let me pull up his. You got to go follow David Bretto. He'll hate it, which is why you should do it. At David_Bretto, Bretto. I think everyone follows Megan Julian, but go follow Megan Julian. Allie Raymond, Eric Smith, our senior writer. Go follow all of them. Go on our website, see who works here, and just go follow them because they're good people and people should see their work. So do that.
Just a bunch of rock stars that are part of your team and everyone that works together so well to create what is truly, one of the best in the biz, among others, with what you guys have and put out there. And Jason, cannot thank you for coming on the podcast today, sharing some of your knowledge, your wisdom, your insight, talking about what a talented team you have around you, and just thanks a lot. And I look forward to continuing to follow the Chargers and all the fire content they put out in the future.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much again, Jason Lavine, VP of Content Production for the Los Angeles Chargers. Just a fantastic episode. I was so excited to be able to talk to Jason on the podcast today, and he delivered time and time again. Just a fantastic interview. Listen to it, share it, talk about it. But thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287, also on LinkedIn, where I post more content. The website, as always, dsmsports.net, and check out the podcast on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.